the US government always lies about something until the lie has served its purpose, and then they throw it off. Guess what? God is willing to allow his truths to be covered until the lie is no longer needed. So the Lord allows the lies of man to prosper until a time, and that time is when the Lord's great purposes must manifest. At the time that God's great purposes must manifest, at the time that God himself has an appointment to keep, he has things to complete, he has people to raise up, and he has people to humble. It is at that time that God himself stretches and he throws off humanity's lies, and that is when you see the truth bright, shining, and uncorroded. You cannot corrode truth. It doesn't matter how long you hide it. It doesn't matter how long you suppress it. Truth is Jesus Christ, and so he can never get rusty. I'm going to read you just a tiny bit from the prophecy that the Lord gave me on March 23rd, which is just this past Sunday, 2025. It is called The Fall of Yehodom and the Rise of the House of Israel, and I'm going to just start from here. I will dismantle the state of Israel in its present modern day application, such that there will be no state to refer to anymore. Anything that is presently called Israel, anything that is looked at now as modern day Israel, will be dismantled and broken up until there is nothing there to make reference to anymore. I will chase them from my land back to all the nations where they came from. Just as they were artificially gathered, they shall be scattered back to their origin points under pressure of my fire and duress, until no one may point to them and say, there is the nation of Israel. Modern day Israel is not my nation and not my people, neither by election as the seed of Abraham, nor selection as the house of David. They are not Israel. This is just a piece of a prophecy that God was pouring into me, and I was typing as fast as I can. Just listen. God is so precise. Listen to the peculiarity and the precision of his speech. Yah says, modern day Israel is not my nation. Modern day Israel is not my people. Okay, but then he goes on to specify two specific ways that God made sure that he would always be able to recognize his people. He says, by election as the seed of Abraham. The election of Abraham, at the time that God chose Abraham to use as the starting point to start up this huge global family that would one day be called Israel. Abraham was not a righteous man. Abraham was a Babylonian. He was from Ur, a part of the area called Chaldea. He is a man from Ur of the Chaldees, but God elected to choose him. God said that man, whose father, if you read some of the extra biblical books, please, you need to understand, extra biblical simply means outside of the Bible. There's plenty of historical texts, for instance, that confirm that Jesus did exist, and that, in fact, the way the Romans wrote about Jesus is that they saw him as a troublemaker, okay? And then there's all the writings of Josephus. Josephus is not in the Bible. He's not mentioned, but he was an excellent historian that completely captured the story of the Jews, the story of the temples, that even made mention of Jesus. He's one of the ones where you can get a greater understanding of, for instance, Simon the Zealot, what the Zealots were, the disappointment of Judas, how Judas became disillusioned because he thought Jesus was going to come and be a revolutionary and restore Israel to power and prominence, and Jesus just came with his carpenter ways and was always talking in parables, mysteries, and helping poor people. So Josephus is what we call an extra biblical text. Extra simply means outside of, like the book of Jasher, like the book of Enoch. Extra does not mean anti. The book of Enoch is not an anti-biblical text. It is not against the Bible. It doesn't fight the Bible. It doesn't argue with the Bible and try to depose the Bible as canon. It simply bolsters up the truth of God's word and provides context. Extra does not mean anti. And so Abraham's father was a man, I think his name was Terah. I'm not sure. Yes, I think his name was Terah. Abraham's father, Terah, was a man of multiple gods. This is Abraham's heritage. A multiple God worshiper was his father, and Abraham grew up worshiping his father's gods. But at a certain point, just like young Gideon, he destroyed them all and followed this one God. Now you have better understanding of why nobody else came with him. They were all stuck in that polytheistic religious dogma, but not Abraham. When Abraham had an encounter with God, he believed God, and that is why God counted it for righteousness. Now you understand how important it is that a man of multiple gods heard the one God and he believed right away. So that is election. Abraham. But then God says selection as the house of David. So Abraham is the father of all the 12. But then David's house, Judah, was now exalted high above. It is a selected house.